Patients getting paid. What a concept. If your story's anything like mine, you had to dial back your job or leave it altogether thanks to your chronic illness. The paychecks quit coming, but the bills didn't, right? I spent years weeding through the scam job sites for flexible jobs and scam trainings for how to start an online business. I learned about paying patient advocacy gigs by overhearing someone talking about them on a bus. It's crazy the amount of time, energy, and money I spent trying to figure out how to work for myself or others in a flexible way that could accommodate doctor's appointments and hospital infusions or just not feeling well. Take advantage of my years of learning these tough lessons and get right to how to do it for yourself by signing up for my course, Patients Getting Paid, where you'll learn where to find these jobs and how to put your best foot forward in getting them or how to create your own flexible opportunities. Sign up right now for more information. Go to FUMSnow.com/patients getting paid. Welcome to the FUMS Now podcast show, where you'll gain information, inspiration, and motivation for living your best life with multiple sclerosis. Find us online at FUMSnow.com. I'm your host, Kathy Reagan Young. Today I'm talking with Mary Dale Walters, Senior Vice President of Strategic Communications at Allsup, a company that specializes in disability services for over 30 years and successfully helped more than 300,000 individuals receive the Social Security disability benefits they deserve. Mary Dale focuses on the company's efforts to ensure advocacy and access to a continuing quality of life for tens of thousands of customers across the country. This interview will help a ton of people to understand the process of qualifying and filing for disability. This is an important one. Don't forget, the show notes can be found at FUMSnow.com/podcast. Let's go meet Mary Dale. Hi, Mary Dale. Thanks so much for being here with me today. I really appreciate it.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
So I saw a statistic on the National MS Society website that said approximately 40% of all people with multiple sclerosis in the U.S. rely on some form of disability insurance for their income. That's a lot more than I would have thought based on what I see on some of these MS Facebook groups, like, the FUMS Facebook page, where people are saying how really difficult it is to get disability. Obviously, this is a hot topic in our community, and I, for one, find it really confusing. I'm so glad you're here to answer these questions because I'm lost, but and I'm sure other people are as well. So let's start with the basics. Can you please explain for everyone just exactly what Social Security disability insurance is?
Sure. It is a insurance that you pay for through your payroll taxes or your FICA taxes. When you pay your FICA taxes, every time they give you a paycheck, they take it out. And those FICA taxes go toward two things, Social Security and Medicare for when you're 65, or in Social Security's case, disability's case earlier. On the Social Security side, the majority of those dollars that you pay into the system go toward your retirement fund, but a small portion of those go toward the disability trust, just in case you're in the difficult position one day of not being able to work because of the disability.
Got it. Okay. So as working people, part of what's taken out of our paychecks, like you said, is actually the Social Security or FICA, it says on the paychecks. So that's what funds disability payments, right? So we're
Correct.
paying into it. That is money that we have paid into, and it's kind of a, I hate to say rainy day fund, but point being, we pay into it just in case.
It's it's almost like any other kind of insurance you would pay for. Health insurance, car insurance, homeowners insurance, anything that is to manage risk, essentially.
Okay.
There is another type of disability insurance for people who do not have enough work history, and it's called SSI. But I think for the purposes of our discussion today, most of your folks that are probably participating or watching or listening are probably former workers who've paid for Social Security disability insurance.
Right. And just to be clear, we're talking about people handing out paychecks, but this is true too if you're a contractor or self-employed, as long as you've been paying your taxes, right?
Correct. And if you're self-employed, you're actually paying usually your FICA taxes, your employer pays half and you pay half. So if you're self-employed, you're actually paying both parts of your FICA tax.
Paying it all. Got it. Okay. So that's sort of the government side of things, but there's also private disability insurance. So again, that's like my understanding is it's much like you just referenced paying for life insurance or homeowners insurance, but this is for disability. Am I on the right path there?
Correct.
Okay.
It's called long-term disability insurance.
Okay.
It usually comes to workers through their employer.
Mm-hmm.
Their employer either pays their premium for them or they pay a portion or all of their premium. So it's part of a group premium package. So you get a price break, so to speak, just like you do with your health care.
Right.
And if you have the option at work, it's usually very affordable. In my opinion, you should never turn down disability insurance that comes from your group employer. They can't discriminate against you if you have a disability already and you're still working. Mm-hmm. And it's usually very affordable. And it's going to pay, on average, about 60% of your salary if you can no longer do that job that you're insured for.
Got it. Now, you called that long-term insurance, but there is short-term disability insurance too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Short-term is just what it sounds like. It's usually 3 to 6 months. Typically, women who go out on maternity leave, they're in a short-term
Got it.
disability time period. Those are typically funded by the company or by your employer yourself. If you're self-employed, you may actually have a short-term disability policy. Most long-term disability policies will not kick in until you've expended all of your short-term disability.
Okay. Got it. Thank you for clarifying. Now, is applying for both government and that private disability the same process?
It's different.
Okay.
Particularly because your private insurance insures you not to be able to do that job that you were doing yesterday when you had to leave work. So if you were let's say you were an airline pilot and you can't be an airline pilot anymore because of your disability, that's what they're insuring you for. The government program has a stricter criteria. You have to be able to prove to them that you can't work pretty much at all, that your disability is going to stop you from working for 12 months or more. Mm-hmm. So the criteria is actually more difficult at the federal government level than the private insurance. Under private insurance, however, you often have limitations in your coverage. For example, they will reevaluate you in 2 years sometimes, depending on your policy, to see if you can do any job. So it may not last as long. Okay. It just depends on how your policy is written and what your group benefits provide to you.
So if you have that private disability insurance, can you apply for them concurrently? Or
you may.
Okay.
You may. Often a long-term disability private company will assess you internally to see whether they think you're going to go back to work eventually or not. Mm-hmm. If they don't believe that you're going to go back to work eventually, they send you to companies like Allsup and ask that company like Allsup to assess your eligibility for Social Security.
Got it.
If you're eligible for Social Security, or at least if that representation organization, which is what Allsup does, agrees that you are eligible, they will take it from there and they will represent you through the Social Security system. Mm-hmm. The good thing is the private insurer will pay your fee to your representative to represent you through Social Security. Mm-hmm. The not so great news is if you get your Social Security disability, your private insurer is going to reduce what they pay you every month by the amount that you get from the government. You're still getting the same amount. You're just getting it from two different sources. And that's called an offset. And that's very confusing to a lot of people. But it's a common way that insurance companies work.
Got it. Okay. That's a lot to take in. So
it is.
If anybody's got cog fog going on today, thank goodness this is recorded. You can listen to it another time. How does someone qualify for disability? And does having multiple sclerosis automatically qualify you to receive disability payments?
It does not, because it is a progressive disease.
Mm-hmm.
So you may have been diagnosed, let's say, at the age of 30 with the disease, but it has not yet fully affected your ability to work.
Mm-hmm.
So to be eligible for the Social Security system, there are a couple criteria. Number one, you have to be insured. You have to have a work history and pay those FICA taxes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're over 30, the general criteria is you've worked 5 out of the last 10 years. It's a complicated formula, but basically you have to have earned a certain amount of money for a certain number of quarters,
Mm-hmm.
which puts your money into the system. So that's the first thing we and they will look at is, are you actually covered?
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to be able to prove to them that you will not be able to work or have not been able to work for 12 months or more, or that whatever disability you have is going to result in your death in a short time frame. You need to have a lot of medical evidence that proves to Social Security that you have a disability, that you can't do the job you were doing, and that you can't do any other job. They have something called medical listings,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a medical listing for neurological disorders, which is what MS falls under,
Mm-hmm.
and it's 11.00. And someone can go online to ssa.gov and read what their criteria are. It's basically about mental and physical function, cognitive ability, physical abilities. And then there's a special section for multiple sclerosis that's 11.09. So then it talks specifically about disorganization of motor functions in 2 extremities at least. It talks about marked limitation in physical functioning, such as, and then they'll literally tell you it has to be one of these things. So one of these things could be understanding, remembering, and applying information.
Mm-hmm.
It could be interacting with others. It could be concentrating. It could be adapting and managing oneself. So it will tell you in advance what you have to have. And you need to have your doctor with all that nice medical evidence that you can provide. Your doctor has to agree that you can no longer work because of your disability.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key here. It's not that you have a disability, it's that you cannot work because of your disability.
Okay. Yeah, got it. All right. So the big question is, and I think I know what your answer is going to be, how much does it pay out and how often?
And that's always a good question. It depends on how much you've earned when you enter the system. The average monthly payment is $1,200 a month, a little under $1,200 a month. That gets adjusted every year for a cost of living increase. If you have been a high earner in your career, and you are maybe going into your 40s by the time your MS makes it difficult for you to work, you probably get a little bit higher amount if you've been a higher earner. Generally, it kind of caps out in the high 2000s, like 2,800 or so, I believe it is. It comes every month. If you wait a long time in the system, going through applications and appeal after appeal, which is really common these days, you get, basically, they give you a lump sum for your wait time. So if you've waited, there's a 5-month waiting period up front. And if, let's say, you waited 18 months to get your benefits, they're going to subtract that 5 months. They're going to give you 13 months of back pay right off the bat. And then your monthly payment begins after that.
Okay. Right.
It's government math. It's not easy.
Holy cow. I mean, I have to say, and I'm sure a lot of people are thinking this, this is something I have paid into. It seems like it shouldn't be this difficult to get my money back, but whatever. So, is it true that every initial application for disability is denied?
No, it's not true.
Is it most?
A lot of them are.
Yeah.
Only a third are approved at the application level. It's actually about 34% right now. There are certain types of disabilities, there's about 225, 230 of them, called compassionate allowances. And if you have what they deem a compassionate allowance, a typical one would be almost any cancer that's at stage 4 that is life-threatening.
Mm.
If you have a compassionate allowance, they're usually going to make a decision within 4 to 6 weeks, right when you apply, because it's just like,
Right,
it's
I
like
would
a
hope so.
stamp. Okay, this person has
Yes.
stage 4 colon cancer. You're approved.
Right.
Other than that, you're going to go through the traditional, there's like a 5-step sequential evaluation. They're going to ask the same questions of everybody in their own process. And you're going to go through all of that. The challenge with people with MS is that it's a progressive disease.
Right.
So the challenge is also, when should I apply? If you have your
sweet
first,
spot, right?
yeah. And, you have something that's relapsing, remitting, you're fine, and then you go into remission for a couple of years, and then it's back.
Right.
And it's a challenge. In our environment, and we handle hundreds of MS individuals a year, representing them for Social Security disability.
Mm-hmm.
We get most of those people awarded at the application level. It's because we do a really thorough evaluation up front, and people with progressive diseases should not be afraid to keep asking for that free evaluation from a representative like Allsup, because they may see things that aren't yet obvious to you, even though you have the disease. They may see other things that affect you, like depression is really common with people who have severe disabilities. Yes. Sometimes we find that the depression is actually the worst problem because you're facing a progressive disease and watching the decline and the impact on your family, and that sends people into depression or anxiety. And you don't want to waste your time, so you always need to know before you apply, now's the time to apply. Right. And I think that's what happens with us when we get people and we advise them, your condition isn't severe enough. You've still been able to work. You've been back and forth to work, yes, but you're still able to work. Mm-hmm. It can be challenging. Now, there are a lot of people who will apply knowing I'm probably not quite there yet with my MS, but you're going to stick it out because between you and your doctor and your representative, you're moving pretty aggressively into the next disease phase.
Right.
You may apply today knowing you're going to get denied in 6 months, but in the next year this is going to happen. So you keep in the system and appealing.
Sure. Well, I was going to say, especially too with MS, the cog fog, the cognitive stuff can be such a huge challenge. So if you do have sort of a time frame where you perhaps are more on the ball than not, getting your ducks in a row, I would think would be a good idea.
Definitely. Yeah. And the other thing too is some people with certain types of disabilities, they're taking drug regimens. And they're on an aggressive drug regimen, and it helps control the disease, slow the disease, make the person able to function a little bit better. The drug regimen itself may make it very difficult for you to work.
Truth.
You may be, and I don't know about the MS pharmaceuticals particularly, but they could make it difficult for you to drive, to respond quickly, to take direction. A lot of these drugs create kind of a foggy brain, I think they call it.
Yeah.
So you also have to be honest and open about what is the impact of the drugs that you're taking, because that could play into your ability to work.
Right. Truth. So, the paperwork, I understand, can be completely overwhelming. So you have medical history, so working with your doctor, right? Work history.
Yes.
And what else?
Yes. It's called Activities of Daily Living Questionnaires, and it's a really crucial component of your application and appeal materials. That's the document and they vary by state, but for example, it could have questions about really broad questions like, tell us about your day. What do you do all day? You need to be very specific, and that's what a representative is good about, helping you really think through how your life may have changed. Oh, yeah, I can get up in the morning and brush my teeth. Well, you need help rising, standing, from a seated position. I need to sit down for personal grooming in the tub when I brush my teeth. I can't drive anymore. I can sit and watch TV all day, but I can't go and play golf anymore. I can't watch my child's soccer game.
Right.
I can't do certain activities. And that really begin to think about how we've adapted our life or minimized activities in our life. They look at all of that because if you say, well, I can't work, but yeah, I still golf every day. I still do all these things every day.
Right.
Your disease would imply, well, you shouldn't be able to golf. Those are the things that they want to match up in the end.
Yeah.
And that's where your family members, in particular, your caregivers, can be very helpful because you're not always honest with yourself.
Right.
You know?
That's true.
It takes a spouse to go, well, you're not as steady on your feet as you think you are.
Right.
Or, you're kind of cranky until your meds kick in.
Yeah. And a spouse would certainly say that.
Yeah.
So this is really like an impact statement. How is this impacting your life day to day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I use my own sister as an example. She was blind. If you asked her, do you go to the grocery store? She would say yes. But somebody had to drive her. Somebody had to help her push the cart. Somebody had to make sure that they hadn't rearranged the product on the shelves, that she was going to pick up the wrong product.
Right.
To tell her what the prices were, to make sure she got the right change at the checkout stand, and to drive her home.
Right.
Yet she, in her mind, goes to the grocery store.
Right. And so her answer may
explaining what that really means in her world is crucial.
Right. Yeah. She may have just answered, yes, I do go grocery shopping, but there's a lot more to it. I got it. Okay.
Yes.
Now, I've heard that you can still work while receiving disability payments, right? Just not full time? What's the threshold?
It depends on what full time is to you. It's about earnings.
Okay.
You can earn about a little over $1,100 a month.
Okay. In addition.
And still work. Yes, you can, in addition to your benefits.
Okay.
Frankly, if you're doing that when you apply for benefits and you're under what they call SGA, that's the acronym they use, and you go before a judge in a hearing level, and he says, well, you say you can't work, but you're working part-time at the retailer down the street from you, he or she may not be really favorable to that activity. Usually when you apply, they're looking for a work interruption. Although that's a very difficult thing for all of us because we need to be able to sustain ourselves economically. Yeah.
And I don't think $1,100 is, living high off the hog either. So
there are two things to know about working and disability. First is that you can earn a small amount and maintain your benefits without losing your benefits. The other thing most people don't know is there's actually a return to work benefit once you are on Social Security disability. And that is a program called the Ticket to Work program. Also has what's called an employment network. And we represent people in helping them get back to work when they're on benefit. And there's, of course, lots of complexity to making that decision.
Right.
So having an employment network assist you in that process and kind of make sure you don't get tangled up with Social Security on these issues. But if you go back to work or try to go back to work under the Ticket to Work program, you get a certain amount of time period to work through a plan. You're not ready today, but you're thinking in 6 months, I had surgery today, and 6 months I should be ready to go, or I think I can try again. The employment network will work with you to put together a work plan. Can you go back to your former employer, maybe in a different job? Do you need a new employer? Let's work on your resume. Let's assess your skills because you can't do that job you were doing before, but you can do a different job. Being in the Ticket to Work program means that what's called your continuing disability review will be frozen. So if you get awarded benefits, they determine if you're likely to see improvement, not likely to see improvement, or medical improvements not expected. And they slap this little label on you, and then they say you have a continuing disability review in 1, 3, or 5 years. And usually with progressive diseases, it's not a short-term CDR, it's a longer term. But if you're coming up on your 3-year CDR and you're in the Ticket to Work program, they don't conduct that review. So your benefits are assured so to speak, while you're trying to go back to work. There's a trial work period that the EN helps you work through that lets you earn both money and your benefits.
Mm-hmm.
You will retain, and if you go back to work full time, they'll help you work everything out with Social Security to stop your benefits. You can also get back on benefits if you falter at staying at work within the next 5 years. You can go back on your benefits and get them reinstated without having to reapply.
Oh, nice.
You get Medicare when you're on disability. Within 24 months of your payment starting, you can be eligible for Medicare under the age of 65. Your Medicare benefits continue even if you go back to work, which is a good thing for an employer and encouraging, because if you're a more expensive employee to maintain in their health plan and you have Medicare, that can be an extra advantage to the employee when they're looking for that work. They're not supposed to discriminate against you because of your disability.
Right.
And your EN will help you kind of navigate through the ADA and what those requirements are.
Holy cow. Okay. I'm actually tracking with this, which surprises me. So that speaks volumes for how clearly you're explaining it. Thank you. So there's a ton of paperwork, but are there any types of interviews? I think you referenced something about going in front of a judge, which just made my knees buckle when you said that.
Yeah, there's a couple things that can happen. You apply and you're provided with benefits. Sometimes in the time period that you apply and you're waiting, Social Security will send you to their doctor. And their doctor's opinion, more recently, this is a change they made. It used to be that your doctor's opinion kind of overrode every other doctor's opinion. Not anymore. Social Security does not give greater weight to your own treating physician who may have been treating you with MS for the last 15 years and be a specialist.
Right.
They often send you to their own doctor. So that can be one kind of, I wouldn't call it an interview, but it's kind of close.
Yeah.
If you don't get benefits at that application level, there are 3 levels of appeal after that. The second level is called reconsideration. Almost no one, about 14% of people, get approved for benefits then. That takes about, applications 3 to 4 months on average, reconsiderations 3 to 6 months on average.
Gracious.
Then if you keep getting denied and you decide you want to appeal, then you get and ask for a hearing before a judge. Right now, it's a 598-day wait on average across the country for a hearing and a decision from that judge. In those cases, your representative, like Allsup, preps you for the hearing, gathers all your medical still, updates everything, presents everything to the judge, gets vocational information, et cetera, about you and your abilities, and they represent you before the judge. Usually the individual is there at the hearing. The judge may or may not ask you questions at that hearing. Often they do. So when it comes to being interviewed, that's as close as you're going to get. And it can be a little scary. It's not like a big courtroom like Perry Mason with a judge on a big bench. Half the time it's in a really small, cramped room and you're doing it by video sometimes. So
okay.
You never know where your judge is sometimes. Well, yeah.
This is so...
you might apply, let's say you live in Los Angeles and you apply and your hearing office would be Los Angeles. Well, they move 43% of all hearings to another office. You could be doing it by video from Chicago, but live in LA.
Okay. So that clears up another question, I think, that some people have, that, you know, if you were to get representation, it doesn't have to be in your state because this is a federal program. Is that right? Do I have that clear?
It's a federal program. And what you want is you want an expert, somebody like an Allsup, which has almost 35 years of experience representing people. We have reps all over the country and in pretty much every state who work regularly with those hearing offices and have a certain level of experience and success rates before we will work with them. And we manage everything for you, and then they do the claim development and come to the hearing. They'll prep you before a hearing and those kinds of things. So it's really about finding an expert. And there are probably representatives out there, and I would say Allsup is one, who specialize in MS. And when you go to start interviewing representatives, that's one of the questions you should ask. How many cases do you handle every year with somebody who has MS? You want somebody who knows what you're going through, who understands your disability enough to understand the medical and really be responsive to you and understand what you need.
Yeah.
And you also want somebody who will represent you at the application level, which isn't real common. Most lawyers don't represent you there. Allsup specializes in that. And that's why we're good at screening people up front and assessing their eligibility.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to waste your time.
Right.
We don't want to waste our time. And we don't want to cram people into the federal system who aren't eligible, because that just slows down people who are eligible. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The good news is application levels have dropped by substantially. Last year, over 2 million people applied. This year, it's projected at 1.5 million. So fewer people are applying. Yeah, this is a reality of the disability system is when the economy improves, people are able to find jobs, even part-time jobs, and stay at work with their disability. Yet this morning they announced the unemployment rate dropped to 3.7%, which is great.
Right.
The unemployment rate for people with disability looking for jobs is 8%. So it's still tough out there if you have a disability.
Yeah. They don't report that in the news. Anyway.
Very rarely.
Yeah. So if people are contemplating applying for disability, I'm just wondering, is there sort of a calculator or something where people, I don't know, could run basic numbers and determine if they will qualify before sort of starting this Herculean task?
You can do two things. You can go to our website, truehelp.com, and there's a calculator on there under SSDI 101 section. Okay. There's a calculator there.
Good.
You can also, and it takes a little patience, but there's something called My SSA. If you go to ssa.gov, you can sign up to get your online to see your personal report. This used to be something Social Security used to mail to everybody, but they don't anymore.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I think now it was a cost-cutting measure, and so many people were uncertain and don't want to use their challenging system online. It's gotten better. The hard part is proving to them who you are, because they're very protective of identity and they don't want all your Social Security numbers stolen. So, but if you go to ssa.gov and you sign up and set up all your passwords and everything to look at that report, it will literally tell you are eligible for SSDI. Here's what your monthly payment at this point in your life, based on your earnings, that monthly payment would be. It'll also tell you what your retirement amounts are and other information about your eligibility. I have a friend who wasn't sure if she was eligible because she's had a lot of work interruptions. She went and found out that she was no longer insured for disability because if you added up all her quarters of work, she hadn't worked and paid FICA taxes for 5 out of the last 10 years. If you're under age 30, that number changes a little bit. It's more like 4 out of the last 10 years. So especially if you're early diagnosed with MS, in your 20s, go there and look to make sure you understand your eligibility based on technical eligibility.
Yeah, and that's a biggie. I know I looked into it when I had to leave my job, and I had only recently gone back to work. I had stayed home with kids for a number of years. And once they were, in school, I went back to work, and then I got hit with MS and yada, yada. And I go to look, and I don't have, I had been working since I was a kid, but not enough in the last, whatever it was, 5 out of the last 10, whatever it was. I was in that donut hole.
And children or young adults can sometimes, they might be eligible if they haven't had the opportunity to work.
Sure.
They may be eligible based on their parents' record, which is really complicated. And, but it's not uncommon for people with developmental disabilities, for example, they age into early adulthood, and they might be eligible for SSDI or SSI, depending on their work history, parents' work histories, etc.
Yeah.
If you want to know, like right now, is my condition severe enough? Should I be applying now? You can do one of two things. You can go online, and I'll repeat this address twice, to file, FILESSDI.truehelp.com. That will put you into our tool called Empower that will assess you. It asks 20 or 30 questions, and it'll give you kind of an immediate response of, we think you're eligible, or you don't look eligible to us. Or you can call 1-800-678-3276. That's 1-800-678-3276. And you'll get a live person on the phone who works for Allsup, and that person can help you with the assessment, and they'll ask you the same questions and help determine if you're eligible. Sometimes they can give you advice as in, you don't have enough quarters of coverage. If you can keep working for another 2 quarters, you'll hit eligibility. You'll hit at least technical eligibility. You'll be insured.
Right.
So those are people who talk to people all day long with disabilities and help them understand eligibility for Social Security.
That's excellent. So that kind of answers another question, which was, do you have to have representation for this? But it seems you don't, but it sure would grease the skids, it sounds like.
If you have, I only know our data compared to the national data. If you retain Allsup for your application representation, your odds of being approved for benefits goes up 50%.
Wow, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, the national average is 34%. Ours is in the 50 to 60%. It varies by type of disability, obviously, but for severe cases, particularly if you're in advanced MS stage, you definitely need somebody. Number one, you have impairments, and if you're alone or if you have family members, they have enough to worry about. You've got enough to worry about. The fees are set by law, so you know in advance in general what your fee can or can't be. It's worth it for somebody else to be managing all of the questions and the communications, and you're not hearing from Social Security. Well, we're calling them.
Right.
We're monitoring them, going, hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? I can think of a case that just came to my attention recently where they seem to have lost everything this person gave us that we gave them. This person actually took documents to the local office. They still didn't get in the system. And it took 2 months for us basically nagging Social Security and making them look for the paperwork. The people at Social Security are great. They want to help people, but they're restricted sometimes by the rickety kind of complex systems that they have.
Right. Lots of antiquated systems in our government.
Yeah. So when somebody says, oh, you don't need a lawyer or a representative, just apply on your own, in my opinion, that's a big mistake, because if you don't make it that first level, you're there for, it could be 2 or more years before you get a decision.
And those fees.
And you don't need that stress.
Right. Amen, sister. So those fees are not payable until you get paid your disability. Is that correct?
Correct. If we, for some reason, don't get you your disability, you don't owe us a thing. And your fee is capped at $6,000. And someone who wins at the application level isn't going to be near $6,000. That's more likely to be. But if you're with us for 4 years, and it's maximum $6,000, and it's set by law, and it's 25% of that retroactive payment, that lump sum I was talking about.
Right. And
so
do they pay you directly or the representative directly? Does the government pay that rep directly, or when you receive that lump sum?
That's a great question. That's a great question. We all try to make it easier on the individual applicant. So what happens is Social Security sees what we file a form that says we're your representative. Social Security sends us our fee out of your lump sum. We pay Social Security an administrative fee to do that for you and for us. Then they send you, and it all happens pretty quickly usually, then they send you the remainder of your lump sum payment.
Okay.
And it's all done electronically. Sometimes they're so fast that it's in your checking account before either one of us gets a letter saying, okay, you've been decided.
Right.
That's always a nice financial surprise when it happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's very good to know, because I'm sure that's a huge stressor to think, right, I'm going to hire somebody, but I don't have any money, and I'm trying to get some money, but I don't know how long it's going to take to get the money. And then how much will I have? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I think that answer right there is just going to alleviate a lot of stress for sure. And I just want to mention to everyone, we're talking about a lot of resources here, and this will all be captured for you in the show notes at fumsnow.com/podcast. Search this for this podcast. All of the notes will be in there. There will be hyperlinks. And again, this is recorded. You get to listen to it over and over if you want, but you don't have to take the notes. I took them for you. So, I posted about this upcoming interview on the FUMS Facebook page and asked if anyone had any questions for you. So, Mary Dale, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask those questions of you now.
Sure.
Okay. So there's an anonymous question from that FUMS Facebook page. And they said, what do you have to do to prove a cognitive disability? Just a neuro note? Do you have to go through all the neuropsych testing or anything else? It's such a hard thing to prove. I bet it is.
It is. Mm-hmm. And if you look at that 11.00 neurological medical listing, it will tell you what evidence you need to document your disorder. And they break it down by cognitive, by physical limitations. And that can give you kind of a hint. And when you're talking to your doctor, and I'm sure if you've come to the diagnosis of MS and your diagnosis has, you've progressed in your disease, pretty much your doctor's going to have covered all that. But it's a good thing to look at to make sure that your doctor has noted that in the medical evidence.
Right. Got it. Okay. This is much along the same lines, but how does one prove, give evidence for, and convince an insurance company? By the way, this is Kathy Ackerley. Thank you, Kathy, for this. How does one prove, give evidence for, and convince an insurance company of an invisible illness symptom like fatigue that inhibits your ability to work? I'm assuming that's the same answer, that 11.0.
It is.
Yeah.
And this is where there's also something called, chronic fatigue is part of the medical listings. You can do some cross-searching, but you should find it under that neurological listing for MS. Going back to that, the impact of your caregiver and or family members and or work colleagues, their contribution to questions like that can really help the doctor note that in the medical evidence and help your representative make sure that it's noted in the evidence that they submit to Social Security.
Okay. Excellent. Laura Hinkle Higginbotham asks, how long does disability insurance last after making a claim?
That's a great question. The average age of disability, somebody on disability right now, is 54. For MS, you're probably going to see that be younger because the onset is usually earlier in life. It lasts from the minute you get it to your traditional retirement age. So if you get benefits at 45 and your retirement age is 67, that's how long your disability benefits last. When you reach your retirement age, you move off of disability and on to your retirement payment. Okay.
And is the retirement age is determined by the government? That's not you saying, well, I would have kept working till I was 75.
Correct. Now, I know there are people who are thinking, well, I'm going to take retirement at 62. If you're on disability, you are probably going to take a benefits pay cut if you retire at 62. You can keep going until you're 67 because all of us have that date in our record. It's actually in that online report I was talking about. It will tell you your retirement age is 66 in 6 months, I think is mine. So that's the good news. The even better news is they stop calculating your retirement benefit, so to speak, when you go on disability. Otherwise, if I went on disability at the age of 50 and I retired at age 66, they're going to show 0, 0, 0, zeros for 16 years in my calculation when they go to calculate my retirement benefit. Instead, they freeze the calculation at age 50 for you if you're on benefits at 50, and they don't count any of those zeros going forward into your retirement amount. So you're on disability until, and I find a lot of people on disability don't seem to understand that they're going to go on retirement eventually. The other little quirk of the system is you're 50, you're eligible for Medicare. When you turn 65, you can re-enroll in Medicare even if you're still on disability. And maybe have more options available to you, like supplemental Medicare plans that are difficult to get if you're disabled and under age 65.
Wow. Yeah. This conversation is making me a true believer in hiring representation because there's so much to this. But one last question.
Not to make this a commercial, but Allsup does help people with their Medicare enrollment free as part of their representation.
Oh, nice. Good to know. All right. Last question again from Laura Hinkle Higginbotham. She says, is it possible to make a claim for short-term and later a claim on long-term, but for different illnesses or accidents?
I would think it would be. I mean, like I said, sometimes you start off with a short-term disability that may be problematic because you develop depression. You're in a bad car accident, you're having spinal surgery, depression sits in, and it's really the depression and the long-term disability that gets you, even though you're back up and functioning from a spinal injury standpoint. Mm-hmm. And I know of people who've been approved for benefits during the short time period. If you're eligible during your short-term disability period, your private short-term disability period with your employer, but you're eligible for Social Security disability, do not wait. If you know you're not going to be able to work for 12 months or more, you don't have to wait until you're on long-term to apply.
Oh, good to know. Okay. Well, Mary Dale, this has been super informative. Thank you so much for being here today and answering all of these questions. I think this is really going to help a lot of people. And if people are interested in learning more about Allsup or how to get some help with filing for disability, where should they go?
TrueHelp.com.
Okay. TrueHelp.com. Excellent. Well, again, I want to remind everybody that obviously, there's lots of resources in this wonderful discussion, and I will post all of those links in the show notes. You can find that at FUMSnow.com/podcast. Seek out this podcast, and all those show notes will be there for you. Mary Dale, thanks again so much. Really appreciate it.
Great talking to you.
Take care. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate you listening to the FUMS podcast show. Be sure to subscribe to it so you won't miss an episode. You can do that right on the website at FUMSnow.com. While you're there, sign up for the free email list so you'll be among the first to know of any new findings in MS research, new therapies and products, as well as any blog posts and podcast episodes I release. Want to chat with others in the FUMS community? Join us on Facebook at FUMS Now. Thanks again, and don't forget to talk to the stupid disease as it deserves. Tell it FUMS every day.